Testing 1, 2.
School, there we go. New computer audio, okay. So it just hasn't come on yet?
Yeah.
Now streaming live on YouTube.
48
participants, good.
Okay, so they cannot see us, but they can hear us.
Okay, so we have to be quiet. Hope they do. Here's the good news that she told me.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're going to listen. Woo-woo!
I'm gonna.
Just cover your eyes.
Let everybody know I'm smiling, that's all.
See it in your eyes. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the August 11th regular board meeting of the Milton Area School District. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hosterman?
Here.
Ms. Kessler?
Here.
Mr. Moser?
Here.
Dr. Palouis?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Dr. Weaver?
Here.
Mrs. Rance?
Here.
Thank you.
This evening, we honor the August Citizen of the Month from White Deer Elementary School, Samuel Saber. He's a third grade student. His parents are Paul and Rebecca Saber. His teacher is Mrs. Maynard. Could we all please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we go to presentations and comments, I would like to once again read welcome to the meeting of the Milton Area School District Board of Directors. I'd like to welcome all of our families and community members who are joining us from Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook this evening. We have a few housekeeping items before we start. As a reminder of our board policies about appropriate etiquette during our public meetings, we are respectfully requesting that you conduct yourself in an appropriate manner, refrain from using or writing unsuitable or offensive language or making complaints regarding individual school personnel or other persons associated with our school district. We are Panther proud and recognize the quality of our board administration, faculty, and staff. We encourage questions to be submitted prior to calling the meeting to order. However, due to the circumstances of our gathering during this pandemic, we will be moderating comments online this evening. After administrators complete their presentation to the board, if you have a question regarding the material, you may submit a comment on YouTube, email it directly to publicrelations@miltonsd.org. Thank you for your participation and for your understanding. Start this evening under presentation and comments. Do we have any from visitors that have been sent to us prior to the meeting?
I do not have any at this time. Dwayne, have we received any via Zoom? Yes. Okay.
This evening, we do have with us Dave Ettinger. Dave, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Dave's going to talk to us about the capital campaign.
Thank you. As I said last month, I would be back, and I would be back with copies. So if you allow me a moment to walk these around. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, with everything going on, as you all know, with our Corona-19 going on, we are going to move forward with the capital campaign. So what I would like you to do tonight and over the next few days is take a real hard look at the form that I have handed out to you. It allows you to make a contribution in many different ways. As you will notice across the top, you can have no preference or career and technical education, nutrition and wellness, fitness, arts, athletics, etc. Or you can even make a designation. You can show in the next area where you pledge, and you can base it over time. You could base it over the number of years that you want to base it on. And I would add to that, if you choose to make a donation this year and next year and the following year and so on, we will send out a reminder to you if you would like. We would be glad to do that. There's also a number of different ways to make your payment, as you can see, by check or credit card and so on. And of course, then you will need to put your signature at the bottom. I guess representing the capital campaign, the one thing I would ask is please consider it. You representing the Milton Area School District, I think any gift is fine. Small gifts, large gifts, really doesn't matter. But if we can show our support to the community and your support to the community, that you have joined behind this 100%, I think that would really help the campaign to spark its future. So tonight, I appeal to you, and hopefully that you will be generous, and hopefully that you will take it and take it with your spouse if necessary, and review it. You can return it to Dr. Keegan's secretary, Brenda, or Courtney Ham. She will be the one that will be the official record keeper. Or even if you would want to trouble Mr. Hosterman or someone like that to turn it in, who is a part of the committee, or myself. But again, I appeal to you. I think it's the right time to move forward with the capital campaign, and we're going to do our best to be Panther proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ettinger. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is the PAYS data and universal screeners. Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. Joining me today are two of our instructional coaches, Pam Bailey and Jamie Gare. who were integral in research on universal screeners. And remotely joining us is Dr. Tim Noster from the McDowell Institute, which is out of the College of Education at Bloomsburg University. As many of you know, he has, and his institute have been great partners with the Milton Area School District over the last several years, 5, 6 years now, I think, in addressing some social, emotional, behavioral issues within our school district. So we'll all be taking part tonight. PAYS is the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. It is done every other year. So in the spring, Milton participated in its third round of data collection, so 2015, 2017, 2019. The results we get in the fall, and we are able to compare our data to both other districts in our county as well as state data. And this survey through PCCD, which we have certainly utilized for grant funding, has continued to refine this survey and provide very useful data to us as a school district in implementing programs and how we are using our staff to help our kids in social, emotional, behavioral areas. So about a month ago, in the weekly update, you were provided with the long version of the data analysis. I just wanted to give a real brief overview. We had 2 priority areas. The first one is social, emotional, behavioral wellness to address non-academic barriers to learning. As you can see, the 4 targets involved depression, suicide symptoms, bullying, and violent behavior. And I'm pleased to say that we have met all of our targets when you compare 2015 data to 2019 data. We set targets at 10%, and on the first target, we had an approximate 20% reduction, second, about 10%, third, 36%, and fourth area, 47%. So each of those targets had indicators. I'll just give you one example. The students for the first target were asked questions such as, how often would you say that I feel good, I feel no good at all? And they would have to respond on a Likert scale, often, sometimes, never. Felt depressed most days. So those were the questions to the actual students, and we aligned those to our priority 1 goal and our targets. So we were very pleased with those results. The second priority was connecting families, schools, and communities to address non-academic barriers to learning. And our targets within this area really had to do with community alcohol, cigarettes, and prescription drug usage, as well as our concern for our families that are food insecure. Again, each target area had a decrease of 10%. And again, we saw very promising results in our last data set, as indicated on this slide. So anywhere from 11% to a 57% reduction. So we were certainly pleased for those results, and we can attribute those results to many of the changes that we made within the services and the usage of certain individuals within our school district. We really looked at how we are using our guidance counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists, our involvement of our SAP team, MTSS, not only for academics, but for social, emotional, behavioral. We have implemented school-wide positive behavior supports over the last several years, and certainly we are very proud of the banner recognition that, our 3 elementary schools at one time and our middle school have earned. So in addition to that, we have implemented positive action curriculum K-12 that was grant funded through a Safe Schools grant. Our partnership with Northumberland County Mental Health and Drug and Alcohol brought us Too Good for Drugs program into the district, and another grant brought us the Life Skills program in in middle school. Additionally, through assistance with the McDowell Institute, we have provided professional development to our staff, including youth mental health first aid and QPR, which is a suicide program, and QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. We've also, last year, developed a partnership with BSI, which is now DTAC, to provide community mental health services in our buildings. So when we reflect on what we have done over the last several years to address community mental health issues, we have certainly done a lot, and many people in this room should be very proud of their work in that area. With that said, I look at the data, and I don't think any of us want our kids feeling depressed most days, and we certainly don't want any of our children or anyone we know with active suicidal ideation. So I think we can all agree we still have work to do. And one of our comprehensive goals for the district was to explore universal screeners, and we spent quite a bit of time researching universal screeners with the assistance of our coaches as well as Tim Noster. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim very briefly to talk about universal screeners, just to give you the foundation. And then Jamie's going to talk about the universal screener that we are recommending this evening. And Pam Bailey will be talking briefly about the ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences. You will see on the board agenda tonight, we are requesting board approval to use these screeners to survey kids. So please, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those at the end. So Tim, are you with us?
I am here as long as you can hear me. Are you able to hear me okay?
I can barely hear him. Dwayne, can you help there?
All right, I'll try to get closer to the microphone too. I'll keep talking and then you can tell me when the audio level is okay, all right?
Good on this end. Yep, go ahead, Tim, thank you.
You bet, very good. So thank you for including me in your meeting this evening as a board. As I briefly kind of talk about screeners, I really do just want to pause real quickly for 1 second and really validate what Catherine was sharing or describing in terms of the impact. I've had the opportunity to work with lots of school systems, not just in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but as well as nationally on a number of federal projects. And the fact that you folks have not only hit your targets, but exceeded them in some cases significantly is extraordinary. And I really do want to re-emphasize that. Sometimes it's helpful to hear that from an external source. Again, kudos to the Milton Area School District for its commitment to its children and its families. But as Catherine had said, of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't work still to be done and progress still to be made. So that's what we want to talk about here. So in terms of screening for social, emotional, behavioral wellness, this would be an important next step in the process for Milton Area School District. Screening serves, simply said, as a filtering system to kind of proactively find students sooner rather than later that may be at greater risk for experiencing difficulties with school performance. Catherine had talked a little bit about non-academic barriers. So in terms of what that means, it includes an array of different types of factors or things, such as exposure to traumatic experiences that frankly we've all been experiencing related to COVID-19, as well as when kids experience different forms of either bullying or perhaps experience neglect or other forms of what are referred to as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And you'll hear more about ACEs a little bit later on here this evening. The other thing to understand is that it's really important that we look at screening through the application of what's referred to as multi-tiered logic, or MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, and specifically the positive behavior intervention and support framework, which the Milton Area School District has been heavily involved with implementing for some time now. So Catherine, if you could take us to the next slide. So this next slide you're looking at appears real complicated on the surface. We're going to keep it really basic and simplistic here for our purposes here, talking about screening. All of those kind of positive outcomes you heard Catherine speak to a little bit earlier are really a direct result of a number of the different types of strategies, initiatives, and resource realignment that the school district has been involved with at different tiers of the MTSS structure. A large portion of them have been at what's called that universal preventative tier or tier 1, but there have also been things that have been put in place at the more advanced tiers or tier 2 and tier 3. What screening helps us to do is to find those kiddos that, for a variety of different reasons, really need additional supports at that targeted and or indicated or tier 2 or tier 3 levels to be able to find them sooner rather than later. And that's really what screening positions us to be able to do. If you want to move to the next slide. The reason why screening in this regard, particularly at the universal level or that tier 1 level, is so important is that depending on the data sources that you look at, anywhere from 2% to 20%, and 20% being, of course, 1 out of every 5 kids, school-aged population, may in fact have emotional or behavioral disorders. So depending on the resource or the information source you're looking at, you'll see that range of 2 to maybe 20%. However, only about 1% of kids actually receive special education services for emotional and behavioral disorders. What that essentially means is that the vast majority of kids in the Milton Area School District, as well as every other school district across the nation, who have emotional and behavioral disorders are actually being taught in general education classroom settings by general education teachers. Further kind of compounding that reality is that in a very recent study reported by the National Institute on Health that looked at the data sources related to the impact of COVID-19, some pretty alarming statistics are beginning to emerge with those data, in that 7 out of teens indicate that they've been struggling with mental health issues in the wake of COVID-19, as well as other kind of compelling types of data that suggest that beyond the already existent mental health concerns that existed for kids nationally, as well as obviously within the Milton School District, that has only been exacerbated or compounded further by the experiences of COVID-19. So when we look at what's involved with screening, and we can go to the next slide, when we look at what's involved with screening, universal screening helps to identify kids with both internalizing conditions, say such as depression or an anxiety disorder, as well as kids who have kind of acting out types of behavioral challenges. They help us to find those kids sooner rather than later, rather than waiting for their situations to become so compelling or so challenging that it's less effective with intervention. And it's also, frankly, more time consuming and costly to intervene the longer one waits. Universal screening is typically completed or conducted 3 times a year, around 4 to 6 weeks after the start of school, before or around the winter break, and then about 4 to 6 weeks before school ends. And it's usually completed involving classroom teacher perspectives as it pertains to kids once they've gotten to know the kids. That's why usually universal screening waits for about 4 to 6 weeks after school starts. Universal screening typically takes somewhere between 15 to 75 minutes to complete, and that depends on the screening tool or instrument that's being used. And there are an array of screening tools or instruments that can be selected or used. And Milton staff have really done a very deliberative, and I would argue a very painstaking process of really looking at the array of evidence-based screeners that are out there to hone in on the ones that they're going to be speaking about in a few minutes. If you want to go to the next slide there, Catherine. So a couple of factors to keep in mind when it comes to screening and effectiveness of screening is first that teachers are reliable evaluators or judges, so to speak, of both academic and behavioral performance. But the key is when they're given a clear, overt structure within which to gather the information. Thus, why it is so important to use an evidence-based screening process. Screening should also occur across all students in the area of physical health, academic performance, and of course, what we're talking about this evening, social, emotional, and behavioral types of areas. Another important factor or rationale is that schools need to move increasingly towards proactive screening in order to find kids that are in need sooner rather than later. So as good as the impact has been, and I want to reiterate, it's been phenomenal what Milton has achieved with its student population thus far through their efforts and endeavors. There are still kids that have significant needs, and finding those kids sooner rather than later is really, really important. And then also screening is most effective as what I referred to at the onset when it's conducted within the context of multi-tiered systems of support. So I believe what Jamie's going to talk a little bit about is the behavioral and emotional screening system, which is the evidence-based screening process that the Milton staff have kind of honed in on to present this evening. And then Pam is also going to follow that up by talking about screening for ACEs or adverse childhood experiences as a next layer of screening as kids might surface through the implementation of the behavioral emotional screening system. So Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can talk a little bit about the what's called the BASC-3 and the BESS.
Thank you, Dr. Noster. I'm Jamie Gare. Pam and I have been doing research on the different screeners. We researched about 5 different screeners. I was in contact with people from the companies, having meetings through Zoom with them. We talked about the pros and cons of each, and the BESS, the Behavioral Emotional Screening System, was the one that we decided what would best benefit our kids. It identifies the strengths and weaknesses of the children and adolescents through preschool through high school. And when you do the ratings, the pre-K through 3, that's the teacher and parents. They kind of leave the student out of that one because they're a little younger. Grades 3 through 12, the student, teacher, and the parent if needed. You don't have to do all of the people included, but it offers everybody. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. And as we set up there, they say you can do it 3 times a year, but you don't have to. The beginning of the year and the end of the year, and then you can actually rescreen kids if needed. The behavioral data management system, it tracks the student progress, facilitates the collection and analysis of student behavior data, and produces reports on goal progress. And this can be done in an online program through the Q Global, or it can be done pen and paper. There's also intervention guides to help teachers, also to help me when I'm writing behavior plans for the students. And it generates written tips for parents to use at home, talking about anxiety, depression, academic problems, and attention problems. So it involves the students a lot more, the students and parents a lot more than the other ones that we researched. So after doing all the research, I think that this one would most benefit our kids to help them in every way. We also researched the adverse childhood experience, and I'm going to pass it over to Pam so she can talk about that a little bit.
If I can stand up, I feel like I'm hiding behind the desk. So we've done a lot of research on these tools, and the one that I'm going to talk about is, we sometimes refer it as to the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experience. And there is tons of research to show that students that come from these backgrounds that have adverse childhood experience a lot of behavior issues, academic issues, social and emotional issues that generally can follow them all through their life. So we've really been looking at that. Milton does a phenomenal job of looking at the whole child and not just coming here for the academic piece, but looking at every part of that child's life and trying to help them in any way. So this really falls into that. It is a very short questionnaire. There's only 10 questions. We gave that to you previously. I don't know if you had a chance to look over those questions. There are only 10, but they're very powerful questions. The risk factor is six. They look at the number 6. If you have 6 or more, the higher the number, the greater the risk factor of coming from a home with all those experiences. So a 6 or higher throws up a red flag to us if you do that screening, and then we would try to put supports into place. Again, our MTSS program is an integral part of that. Once we do that screening and we find those kids that are in need, we would use those supports. Because these questions, as I said, if you've read over them, they're pretty powerful. They talk about emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. They ask questions if you've had anybody in your home that's been in prison. So we would rely heavily on our psych department, our social workers, homeschool visitor, all those supports besides our MTSS to look at those once that score is identified. There is no cost as far as that. We get those questions. You have them at your disposal at any time. The key is to figure out what kids are at risk and then where do we go from here? How do we provide supports for those students? So it's a very small piece of a big, large puzzle, but it's part of the social and emotional that we're really looking into. It ties in with all the PAYS data. We do those surveys for a reason. We take that data very seriously and we look at all those pieces and try to figure out how we can best help those students. So I feel this is an important part. We've done a lot of research. We rely heavy on our IU-16 from all the other districts. We talk, the coaches meet with them and talk to those people a lot. Christine Micheltree, everybody in that IU-16 other schools, we can collaborate with them to see, is anybody using this? We do that the same with all the other screeners that Jamie talked about as well. So we've reached out to a lot of people. Lehigh University is another one of our supports with the screener that Jamie talked about. They're going to be a huge support to us with that because they've used it, they've seen it being used. So they've been able to provide a lot of insight on that screener as well to us, and they've said that if we have trouble analyzing the data or any pieces of that, they would come and assist with that. So we've really done a lot of research on that, and we just feel that these are good things of reaching the whole child in the Milton district.
Thank you, Pam. So board, I would like to open it up to any questions that you may have. Again, what we would be asking for tonight is a vote to allow us to use both the BEST and the ACEs questionnaire as a screener to enhance our interventions for social, emotional, and behavioral concerns with our students. Okay, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, well, it's actually not on the agenda, but there was some information provided to you prior to the meeting, the reopening impact of substantial community spread, reopening impact. This is some new information provided the last couple of days. Dr. Keegan will provide the summary here, the plan.
So you have in front of you some potential opportunities for us to consider with the reopening of Milton Area School District, specifically looking at moderate and substantial levels of community transmission in the county. Currently, Union County is the only county in the Commonwealth that has reached substantial level of community transmission. When we received the phone call or the invitation to a Skype meeting this week, it was the first that anyone was introduced to these new types of measures. We're all used to red, yellow, green, and now we have to get used to low, moderate, and substantial. In the past 24 hours, we've had 3 conversations with the Department of Health and the Department of Education. Because we are the only county, they're staying very closely connected to us. In the conversations with us, we learned that every Monday, the new status and data points will be provided statewide regarding where every county is in the Commonwealth. You see the measures that base their level of determination of county status. It's the incident rate per 100,000 residents and/or a percentage positivity, most recent in 7 days, which is why we're getting updates every Monday. It's every 7 days. When we looked at reopening this school year, we thought we had great opportunity for our families, specifically to kids returning to school, the Milton Cyber Academy, and the Flexible Learning Academy. We specifically surveyed our families, and we heard roughly 60 to 65% wanted their kids to come back to school in a traditional learning environment. But other families chose to exercise Milton Cyber Academy and the Flexible Learning Academy, which is approximately 600 of our students. So as we think about tonight in our discussions, right now there's only 60% of 2,000 students that have indicated they would like to come back to Milton in a traditional learning environment. Of those 2,050 students, 36% of our student population lives in Union County, and 64% of our student population lives in Northumberland County. I provided on the back of your handout a breakdown of each of our schools, the different kinds of models that we offered, and the impact of our families based on the surveys. So you'll see, for example, Bacher, 316 families selected traditional, 116 Flexible Learning Academy, 102 want to attend the Milton Cyber Academy, 25 families have selected homeschool. We have 1 student that's currently in outside cyber, and right now we have 104 families that have not responded. And we laid that data out for you for each of the buildings. Bacher, White Deer, which is all of Union County, the middle school, which would house Union County and Northumberland County students, along with the high school. I know that Dr. Levine did have a media release yesterday, and we also spoke directly with the Department of Education. They have had several people on the calls, including Lee Burkett, who's in charge of Career and Technical Education, because Career and Technical Education does have a component of hands-on learning. So if you turn to the chart that was created for us, on the right is the recommended, and I want to stress recommended, instructional models, not mandated, for a low level of community transmission. They're recommending full in-person or blended learning. We consider blended learning to be our flexible learning model. For a county that receives moderate, they are recommending blended learning or full remote learning. And if you are in a level of community transmission of substantial, they are recommending full remote learning model. In speaking with the Department of Education, they support a full remote learning model, and they also support a hybrid learning model, although that is not what was presented by the Secretary of Health. And so in hearing that, we were faced with a dilemma between mandatory and recommended. And you heard data tonight that supports the mental health issues of students. It's pretty compelling when you look at 7 out of 10 teens are struggling with their mental health in the wake of COVID, and 64% surveyed, they indicate that they're going to have long-lasting effects on them. So tonight, as we have a conversation and we move to substantial, right now Union County is in substantial and Northumberland County is in moderate. We have several options to discuss. Continued Milton Cyber Academy, which the board is aware of, Flexible Learning Academy. A new introduction tonight is a hybrid learning model, which would mean that our students would come in a traditional model Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, it would be virtual learning. It would allow for deep cleaning of our 4 buildings and our buses, although the health and safety plan also addresses the cleaning of our facilities and our buses, but this would be an additional cleaning. Learning would occur on Wednesday virtually, and then students would return Thursday, Friday. The other option is 100% virtual learning, and our students would not return to Milton Area School District for face-to-face instruction. Some of the conversations that we had talked about whatever move we make, it directly impacts businesses and scheduling. And the best example I can give is we have a local health institution that employs people from 15 different school districts. In saying that, if they have a 7 a.m. surgery scheduled, what would those folks do with their kids if there's virtual home instruction? Mm-hmm. And not only just for healthcare, but for any of the businesses that are open, where would they go with their children? And you do have an email from a parent that did email me last evening that I wanted to share with the board. The other conversation we had were family arrangements, people having to work, and that they had no child supervision available, either from, everybody's okay today, to how's your learning going and can you support the learning. The third conversation we had was regarding their social emotional wellness and what is the impact if we continue to do 100% virtual learning, if we choose to go to hybrid or any of the other options. We are making a recommendation to board tonight to not delay school, to start on August 20th. We are asking the board for consideration, the hybrid learning model or 100% virtual learning, knowing that school is starting August 20th. We get a second data point on August 17th, and our families need to hear what to prepare for in regards to the upcoming school year. So I'm going to stop and open it up for any board conversation.
I have a question, if that's all right. So I'm sure everybody's heard about the outbreak across the street. Is there any, can you guys hear me okay? Sorry. I'm sure that everybody's heard about the outbreak nearby. I didn't really have time to kind of crunch the numbers today, but is there any indication on whether that would switch Northumberland County into substantial as well?
We have not.
I mean, they're not going to provide that number until Monday.
They have not till Monday. Yeah. Monday, we laid out 9 possible scenarios that we could be substantial, moderate. I mean, it just that we won't know until that data comes out on Monday.
And my second question is, I mean, we heard your beautiful plan prior to all this at last month's meeting, and there was discussion about potentially switching between models and how that might be difficult for families. Is there an opportunity, kind of with the current status of things, to increase the flexibility?
So we did discuss that also as a team, and we have to, as a school district, recognize where people are and just be flexible and work with our families. Depending on the impact of a community spread, and you'll see that there are 2 very small italicized remarks. One is, and I know that Attorney Beard is also participating in this meeting, is that we will follow the protocols of the board-approved health and safety plan and collect data to show that we are enforcing those board-approved health and safety plan protocols. And also, at any time, if we see an outbreak of COVID in our schools, I am allowed to shut down the schools and say, we're going 100% virtual. That's a conversation, again, that the board needs to have. It would be in consultation with the Department of Health, in consultation with your school solicitor. But yes, I mean, we are talking about that. It did throw us a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine. Oh my gosh.
I don't know, Attorney Beard, if you want to weigh in.
Sure, no problem. Well, we talked for well over half an hour today, and you know, our biggest issue all across the Commonwealth with the number of schools we represent is the fact that they'll throw things out and be not entirely definitive. It's like, we're putting it out, this is what we should do, but we're not going to enforce it. It's basically guidance and, you know, it's not mandatory. So they flirt with this mandatory and permissive. Therefore, when the Secretary of Health comes out and says they're not going to enforce this and it's a local decision, as we discussed, as long as boards are not thumbing their nose at the social distancing and the masking, which are part of orders, and doing what I would consider reasonable efforts that to clean and sanitize and do those things, there really isn't a reason to stick with your original plan. But it has been my recommendation to give the superintendent authority in the event, because as I understood it, what was stated by Matt Stem was that, you know, in the event that something, you know, unfortunate would happen, the governor has the right to step in. I believe that we can act on a local level much faster than the governor could. Therefore, I believe the superintendent of schools should be entrusted with the ability to move very quickly. The board could always subsequently vote later at a special meeting to ratify, but if it requires a few hour turnaround, the superintendent has the ability to make that call to go fully virtual or online or remote, whatever that would be, depending upon the circumstances. As long as we are following, you know, CDC, Department of Health guidelines, this whole issue of, you know, districts being sued, anybody can be sued. It's a difference of being sued and sued successfully. We really don't lose any qualified immunity under the Political Subdivisions Tort Claim Act. And the only way that you would really see any type of liability would be through deliberate indifference, where you basically know what you have to do and you thumb your nose and say, you know, I'm not going to do it, and somebody gets harmed, then you possibly could get sued. But as it stands now and the protocols in place and having the efficacy efforts, I believe you can proceed as originally planned, if that's what the board wants to do. Ultimately, it's a board call.
Dr. Keegan, in the event that we, playing devil's advocate, we were to select, say, a hybrid learning model, how long are we, based on the level of community transmission, obligated to stay within that model, even if we were to drop down to low over the course of time? Again, I know we don't want to get into changing course too often, but are we obligated to stay in that model for a specific amount of time?
We added the hybrid learning model, one, to give parents choice if they wanted their child to come to school. But then if you look at that lowest level, those hybrid learning model students would return to traditional. So we would implement hybrid learning model between moderate and substantial, purely for the safety and health of our buildings and our buses, and to have that period of time where there's no one present in these buildings.
If again, hypothetically, if we would go to that, are we obligated for a full marking period, for a semester, to stay in that?
We talked about a time period to give parents notification, but because like in the hybrid learning model, it would just be they'd come on Wednesday. So we could change within a week to say, okay, next week we're going back to 5 days a week once we hit that low.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you currently have kind of, if there is in person, is there a plan for when you decide to shut things down? I mean,
It would
reading
be
the safety
based,
plan and
yeah,
everything.
it would be based on if we have positive cases and conversations with the Department of Health, at what point do we need to shut this down?
I mean, well, you're already in conversation with the
Right,
Department of Health.
right.
So
They've
that's
not
gonna be
given us clear guidelines, but they are our point of contact. Even for one positive case, that's an immediate call to the Department of Health.
The one thing we have to keep in mind is these numbers are being skewed because they're based in institutions. Yes, I recognize that people work in the institutions could have children in our districts, but they probably reside in what I would say 5-county area. So we're being asked to make a decision based off numbers that aren't realistic since they're inside brick walls. We need to keep that in mind as well.
So I'm definitely in agreement with what Attorney Beard had stated. This admin team did a tremendous job putting a plan together, giving parents choices, and it's my feeling that we really need to move forward with that plan, give parents those choices, and implement the plan that everyone worked so hard on. I think it's irresponsible of our governor and or others to come out with recommendations 10 days before the start of school and expect potential changes. I think it's completely unfair, but well-intentioned. They wanted to give guidance, so they did. Unfortunately, timing is poor. This board also approved a safety plan that has been effective throughout the activities that have occurred over the summer. Our kids are healthy, and I believe they're going to stay that way. Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but that's what I'd like to see us do.
We've heard from some families. I've personally heard from families. I think we've received emails from families. I believe that 70% of families want to send their students, their children, back to school. They feel the need for them. They think they're safer in the school than out. We just listened to a great presentation on PAYS about our population. And, our students need us. They need us for safety. They need us to care for them. So the best place for them to be is in our school. So our parents have said they want their students in school. Our data also says that our children should be in school. It's been a long time since they have not actually been able to really learn. And it's time for them to get back to learning. And, we did a great job keeping them connected, but it's time to put them back in a learning mode.
Dr. Keegan, am I correct in saying that there's no threat of penalty for going against the recommended model, such as withheld funding or anything?
So that was why I contacted your school solicitor to say, okay, there's a recommendation, there's not a mandate. So let's talk about what that impact could be on the school district. Attorney Beard, do you want to respond to Mr. Frederick?
Well, sure. I mean, they can always say, well, we're going to withhold that. That's an ultimate capital punishment sanction. You still have the ability to appeal those types of things. But once again, if you were following what you were supposed to be doing and can document that through the efforts of various building principals and the cooperation with the pandemic officer, there would be no reason for them to withhold based on the lack of, and I can be quoted on this, the clear direction that we receive over the period of time, because it's inconsistent and it's not decisive. That's why the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators keep pressing Department of Education, the Department of Health, and Governor Wolf so hard for clear-cut direction. So I don't believe, even though they put it out there as a possibility along with not submitting your plans, I don't think that that is something that is feasible or would occur in the short run, particularly if Dr. Keegan took immediate steps to remedy or, rectify the situation in a relatively short period of time.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or discussion from any board members?
I have a statement I'd like to make.
Sure.
Took some time to prepare this earlier just to collect my thoughts. I actually started to collect the thoughts earlier this week to come here and present to the board about fall sports, but as of yesterday, that kind of evolved into just keeping the school open. I've received over probably 100 calls, text messages, emails, and responded to, mostly from people that never say anything. And it dawned on me, the silent majority is getting uneasy. They're starting to speak. They want to be heard. These are the people that if asked to wear a mask, they comply. These are the people that if they don't like an administrator or board's decision, they'll shrug it off and go on with life. These people are the ones that go to work every day, raise a family, pay taxes, and don't complain. These people have complied. They followed the guidelines, but also are educated, informed, done their own research, drawn their own conclusions. They're very happy we approved a 3-option plan. They wish to keep the right to choose. They respect every individual's family decision. They won't judge. If they choose to go to the brick and mortar school, they want to go there. They want to make the decision their own, not from the board, not from the governor. They know the risks, they want to accept them. The same can be said for fall sports. The risks are known. It should be up to the families to decide if their athlete competes. It only hurts the underprivileged athlete. The ones with the means will join up with a travel team, a club team. They'll go to New York to play soccer. They'll go to Maryland to play softball. They'll go to Ohio to wrestle. They'll run a race in Virginia. So how does canceling fall sports stop the spread when your athletes with the means to do so are going to find a means to compete somewhere? As we discuss these topics tonight, let's remember the silent majority. They're the hardworking, proud Milton people that pay taxes. They voted for us to make decisions for them, the right decisions. So let's open the schools and play the games. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, if that's everything, our next topic is, do you need a decision? Is there a decision that you need?
Attorney Beard, does the board need to make a motion in regards to taking a vote of reopening the schools and giving the superintendent the permission to take immediate steps if there's a significant health and safety risk?
I would do that because you may not have another meeting between now. You can always have a special, but it takes at least 24 hours. So if somebody wants to put a motion out there to that effect, I would say now's a good time to do it. Naturally, you need public comment on it, but it's a good thing to do.
Do you have any public comment?
Would you like me to share them now on all topics?
Do you want to share any public comment related to this topic?
Related to this topic, I think this would be a good time to do that.
Okay. One moment, please. Will the virtual learning be a full day as if in class, or the same as we experienced at the end of the year, where we had smaller periods of time to meet with the teacher and then we're given assignments?
Does the Director of Education or Jeremy, do you want to respond?
So the expectation in the Flexible Learning Academy is that students will be on synchronously with their teachers throughout the day. They will be receiving live direct instruction just like their in-classroom peers. There will be instances where their classroom teacher may assign them a task that doesn't require them to be watching the live stream. They might have to go off and do a digital worksheet or a learning activity in a different means. But by and large, they are going to be responsible for the same amount of classroom time virtually as their in-class classmates.
An additional question is asked regarding the in-person classroom, and how will social distancing be met while in class, as the rooms are full as it is with children sharing tables, sometimes 5 to a table? How will the 6 feet be implemented?
I can answer that. In following the board-approved health and safety plan, not only has non-essential furniture been moved from the classrooms, our building principals have looked at the square footage in every classroom, as well as additional locations throughout their building, and weather permitting outside spaces to use for the instruction for the social distancing. If social distancing of 6 feet can't be met, and the guidelines from the Department of Health and PDE are 6 feet to the maximum extent feasible within your buildings, in the event the 6 feet cannot be managed, that's where our mitigation strategies with masks, desk shields will be implemented as well.
Additional question was just for clarification on the hybrid model, stating the days in person versus the days that will be remote.
The days in person are Monday and Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. Virtual education or remote learning would occur on Wednesdays.
The final item that I have is, oh, sorry, another one just came in. I would like to say that I vote we move ahead as planned. Our families all know the risks and want to choose our options. I agree with the thoughts spoken tonight. And then an additional comment that states, agreed, please open schools. And that is all I have at this time.
Anything from you, Norm?
Yes, a flurry of activity in support of allowing parents to make decisions what's in the best interest of their children, and several, here's one of the options, several in support of Director Moser, one asked, are elementary students going to have access to real books using paper worksheets, pencils, crayons? They're hearing paper materials.
Mr. Slater or Mr. Statler?
Elementary students will absolutely have access to books, paper materials, classroom libraries. We are going to make every effort to make sure that shared supplies are divvied out on an individual basis. We're really trying to cut down on the sharing of particularly art supplies, classroom supplies, markers, crayons, those kind of items. But kids are absolutely still going to have access to all those items.
I would just like to add, we again and again are told about the importance of hand washing, which is certainly a part of the health and safety plan, increased hand washing times. So that will be another mitigating strategy with those shared items.
Then I did receive a couple more that would be pertinent to the discussion. One is just regarding clarification again on the hybrid, knowing that some schools do a group A of students and a group B. They just want to know if all students will be attending Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or if there's a separation of students within those 4 days.
All students will be attending Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
And then another question was asked, is it possible for parents to see the current setup of classrooms and how lunches and class changes would happen on a daily basis?
I do believe that there will be virtual open houses. I'm going to look at our principals. If any of the principals would like to respond in regards to a virtual open house, that could certainly be something that is shown.
And then an additional comment, I would like to commend the individual that mentioned the spike in cases are in brick and mortar buildings, and those employees working in those institutions live in other districts, not just Milton. I feel the hybrid model of traditional on Wednesday would not penalize the students because of the spike. I feel Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being virtual, is ideal. It shows the district is taking steps to mitigate the spread of the virus. And another in agreement that Mr. Moser's statement speaks well for the silent majority.
Dr. Keegan, can I have a clarification? When you said all students will attend Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday?
Those families that choose for their students to participate.
Okay.
Again, we're focusing on that parent choice, you know, your education, your choice. I do want to make a comment in regard to the board and to those that are joining us remotely. Over and over, the Department of Education and the Department of Health talked about the efficacy in school settings related to social distancing and wearing face masks. They have national data now that supports the importance of students and staff making sure that they have on face coverings and that they practice aggressive social distancing. I'll continue to talk about that because it's critical that we keep our doors open and with an opportunity for our students to remain in face-to-face instruction.
All right, if that ends this discussion, is there a motion to accept the newly recommended decisions we discussed?
A clarification on what we're voting on, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I know. So
could we make the motion, Chris, to continue with the current plans?
Yes.
With the addition of the language regarding the superintendent can determine significant health and safety risk, and that she can shut down at any time based on
positive cases within our counties.
So that's not including the hybrid model.
Yeah, is that including the hybrid model or not?
Moving on as planned would be 5 days a week.
Correct. But, if they do the half and half from previous discussions, they could theoretically come Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and do Wednesday virtually.
From a flexible learning model?
Flexible learning standpoint.
Yes.
So the family could choose a flexible learning model and follow
the hybrid learning
model, and we could all be happy.
But that doesn't gain them the additional disinfecting, which Wednesday was supposed to be if the school was closed. So that really doesn't gain them
I think if we
anything.
follow our recommendations we had from before, which were perfectly fine, which Mr. Huffman has amended the cleaning schedules to make this place more sterile than it's ever been, I feel we'll be okay.
So in your motion, Dr. Weaver, do you want to include the additional hybrid learning model?
Yes.
Attorney Beard, could you give us language for this motion, please?
All right, so let's go back. I've been listening in here. So right now, how many days a week are you going back as it's currently presented?
4 days a week based on the substantial level of community transmission, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, virtual Wednesday.
And that's
However, students could choose the Milton Cyber Academy.
So that's the present.
Or flexible learning.
That's the present proposed plan. Is that correct?
The present proposed plan.
Present
Yes.
approved plan has us 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Right. This present proposed
No.
plan.
The present approved plan has 5 days a week.
Right. The present proposed plan has 4. Are you asking proposed?
The one that you put out there before the governor and Department of Health started meddling with everything.
That was 5 days a week.
And what are you?
They're all 5 days a week. It's just that the hybrid model on Wednesday will be virtual.
I would to approve the plan that you had intended, but to give the superintendent the ability to either close schools or to modify the delivery model, taking into consideration the health, safety, and welfare of students and staff in the greater school community. That way you're not like locking yourself into like 2 or 3 different versions that you may not be able to codify tonight.
To stay with the current plan that was already approved, 5 days a week in school.
My impression is that this just gives you the decision-making power, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Closed schools or modify the delivery model.
And so if based on the transmission rates, you feel that that day of cleaning on Wednesday is necessary, you are now given the latitude to make that decision.
Yeah.
Correct.
So in essence, what we had
Staying with our
previously
approved plan.
approved, which included 3 learning modules of traditional, Milton Cyber Academy, and flexible learning. That's 5 days a week.
Addition of the motion is to provide the superintendent the authority to make a change based on numbers in our county.
To close schools or modify the
Or
delivery
modify.
model based on transmission rate.
Correct. All right, that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion and second by Mr. Frederick. We have any further questions? Could we have roll call, please?
Question.
Hold on, Mr. Fink.
A little late.
Want it or not, Fry?
I particularly don't care.
Okay, I didn't think you did.
What's your question?
So a no vote would stick with the current adapted plan, correct?
No, you're voting to stay with
Yeah.
the original plan, and then providing our superintendent the ability to make changes based on
Correct.
numbers.
And a no vote would stick with the current plan without granting permission to change, correct?
It's
Wanted
not
a clarification.
It's not a two-motion vote.
I know it's.
That's what you're asking, I think, if I understand you correctly.
No, I'm just clarifying.
Voting on what is proposed, or you can go back, but.
Right, okay, I'm good.
No, I'm just saying, I think if I understand you correctly, you're asking 2 questions for 1 vote. Can't do it. Mr. Beers will help me on that.
This vote seems like there's about 4 questions happening at once.
Basically, no vote doesn't give the superintendent the
Correct.
ability to modify if necessary.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, we're
That's,
good.
that's why I worded it the way I worded it. If you don't give, I think I heard Dr. Weaver already say, the administrative team has done a yeoman's job and they have boots on the ground and they're experts in the trenches on this. I think they need to be given the ability to make that call.
Just so we clear, can we hear the motion again, please, Carl?
All right. Remember, I'm doing this from memory. As I understand, Dr. Keegan explained, you have your present return to work plan, entry plan. Your present plan is to keep that in place, but to authorize the superintendent to have the ability to close or otherwise modify the delivery model based on the health, safety, and welfare of students, staff, and the greater school community.
So we would be giving the superintendent the authority to implement the hybrid learning model anyway, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Is that without discussion with anyone, Dr. Keegan? Is that without discussion with the board?
Would be informing the board.
I mean, if you wanted to have it's brought to the board, the other thing that you can do, you can always have informational meetings. You can also have an executive session based on safety and security. I mean, you are allowed to do that. Now, I believe that a COVID pandemic or the potential of having a situation in the greater school community allows you to go into executive session and discuss that.
How long must we advertise for that executive session?
You don't, 24 hours, well, just basically written notice to everybody that there will be an informational meeting or an executive session for the purpose of discussing the change in the delivery model. It's basically everybody gets notice and you can have it.
So what would happen in a transition period from notice to the board could meet? We would continue in the current instructional model.
Unless you,
of level.
I would say unless, and this is why I'm going to, preface this, unless you have a significant health and safety issue on your hands. I mean, under the Act 88, in like collective bargaining scenarios, superintendents can call off schools once they get a written notice. I believe if they call off schools due to a teacher strike, they certainly should have the ability under a COVID-19 potential pandemic to say, I'm going to go this direction. I think it's a leap of faith. It's like one of those corporate things where everybody goes out in the woods and somebody falls backwards from 10 feet and hopes everybody catches them.
Call the question, please.
Okay.
Maybe we can call the question.
I'm sorry, I can't
Call
hear
the
you.
question. Okay. That's about,
Well, do we need to change the motion?
I think we should change the motion and add in there that superintendent may close the school for a day or two until the board can convene and discuss the matter.
Okay.
So let's talk about that, though. If you close the school for a couple days, now you're saying to parents, there's no school. Now you come back and you say there is school.
no, I'm not comfortable with that.
No, not at all.
We're not here in the trenches daily, and our administrators are. And we have as a board have made the commitment to entrust our administrators and support them in their decisions. And I don't think this is any way different than our commitment previously. We have a great team. We trust the plan that they've put together, and we need to trust them to make these decisions. A year ago, if you would have said we would be making this decision today, I would have said you were crazy. But here we are. We all have opinions, but we are not the ones in this building daily and working with students. They are.
Right.
I have 100% faith in them and trust in them to make that decision.
I have faith in them, I have trust in them, but this is a community-wide decision. And we are the community.
You can't micromanage, Joe.
I know you can't, but this is a big one.
You don't want to start.
I think truly between announcement and meeting, it would be, we're all pretty close. So it's almost a 24-hour turnaround that we would have at least 5 people available to meet and discuss with you if you would so choose. So
I agree with Mr. Hostman. The team has put together an amazing plan. They presented it to us. I think it's fan. I don't know how it could have been any better. From maintenance all the way through, I don't know. And I've stayed up at night thinking about this. I literally have. And I put all my faith in their decision-making, and I think Dr. Keegan is completely capable of making that decision without the board meeting.
Once she touches base with the proper channels and she makes that decision, we're going to live with it because that's why we put her there. We're not going to micromanage.
I will say though, Mr. Moser is just saying that this is different. This pandemic is different. You know, we do put our faith and trust. They do make wonderful decisions. This is different. I think what Eric is asking is to be a part of that final decision. We've made this decision. We've approved the plan. Why would we not want to be a part of a further plan, which is pretty drastic to, okay, we're shutting down school today, as Dr. Keegan said.
Back in March, we were asked.
No, you were mandated.
We were mandated, but we had talked about it before. Didn't you send out an email that said about, you know,
Well,
until we were told differently?
We're going to continue with school. That was my recommendation.
You informed us as a board before
Right.
it.
And I would continue to inform you.
Right.
I hope through all of the many emails that you get from me, you feel like you're well communicated with every step along the way. If it's mandated, none of us have a say, then we're living with it.
Oh, Chris. Right?
Let's vote.
We're not changing the motion. Is that correct? Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. Could we have roll call, please?
Could I get clarification on who made the original motion?
I made the motion. I believe Mr. Frederick
Yep. Thank you.
seconded the motion.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Ms. Kessler?
Yes.
Mr. Moser?
Yes.
Dr. Palulis?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Our next discussion is the PIAA return to play guidelines. Mr. Harris.
Thank you. Two documents to go over with everyone this evening. The first one is going to be the timeline. I believe everybody has that in their packet. I'm just going to briefly go over quickly the timeline that we have gone through since the beginning of June. June 10th, the governor's office released the resocialization to sport guidelines and gives schools permission to resume workouts with a board-approved documented plan. On June 16th, Milton School Board approves the athletic resocialization to sport, Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 plan. We took a Phase 1 socially distant at all times with no contact, and we took a conservative approach when the governor came out halfway through or beginning of July there that said masks on at all times outdoors. So we stayed in Phase 1 throughout the entire process of June and July until August 3rd. On June 17th, sports voluntarily non-mandatory practices began. July 30th, PIAA releases return to play guidelines and commits to a fall sports season starting on time as scheduled. August 3rd, Milton Athletics moves to Phase 2. Phase 2 was limited contact, still remaining socially distant and we kept that phase through the present date. August 6th, there was athletic directors attend a PIAA District 4 meeting to listen to the PIAA guidelines and have PIAA answer questions to return to fall sports guidelines. It was shortly after we convened that meeting. Also on August 6th, the athletic directors met later on to discuss league schedules. We talked about a league schedule, staying local and only playing the league schedule, not playing outside of our PHAC league. That was discussed as a group of athletic directors and then taken to the executive committee. Also on August 6th, the governor announced he recommends no sports until at least January of 2021. Later that evening, the governor's website was updated to clarify the statement earlier in the day to say that it is only a recommendation and is still up to each school district. Updates clarify that band and cheer, which originally were not allowed and not considered part of the 250, that was updated to allow band and cheer to be part and counted towards the 250. So they were and currently are allowed to participate. The website also restated that fans and spectators are not allowed at events and games. On August 7th, PIAA releases a statement that the start of the fall sports season will be postponed until August 24th. All activity is still to follow board-approved off-season summer workouts. The PIAA will meet again on August 21st to have another statement released. The PIAA wanted time to work with the governor to come to a final decision. August 10th, Dr. Rachel Levine, through a media release, announced a recommendation that Union County should only open school via all virtual method as cases are high, and acknowledges that many of the cases are from the prison system. Districts are to watch the new system of numbers released each Monday. On August 10th, the PHAC Executive Committee met. The league schedule competition model was presented and discussed. No decision was made as of today, August 11th, 2020. August 11th, presentation of return to play fall sports guidelines. That is what I'll be presenting to you next. August 21st, the PIAA will meet and release their newest statement and guidelines of where we are to move forward with. So I first just want to show you, you do not have this packet directly, but it is in our return to play fall sports guidelines. PIAA released a large document, and this is basically what all athletic directors are going by for the return to play for fall sports, and it has every sport individualized in here, how officials are supposed to return to play and the things that they're supposed to do, event staff workers, game day things you're supposed to do. So all the information that was released by PIAA is directly copied into the packet that we have here today. Hopefully you had a little bit of time to go over. I know you didn't get it until last night probably, but the return to play document, this is basically saying that if and when the government and PIAA allow sports to resume this fall, this is the guidelines that we will be following and going by. There's a lot of detail in here. There's a lot of information to digest. The gist of it is we will still be doing everything in our due diligence to clean, protect, and keep our kids safe to the best of our ability. We will follow all the guidelines that we've currently been following for all of our summer workouts and optional practices. And then as we get into game scenarios, there's even stricter guidelines to follow throughout that. To give you an example, captain's meeting for a soccer game usually meets on the sideline with the coaches, 2 or 3 or 4 captains, both officials. Now it's going to be one coach, one captain, center of the field, away from all the other teams, from the scorers table, things like that, to socially distance the best to our ability. Officials have the opportunity to use whistles that are electronic. So they just basically push the button and the whistle will go. They don't have to move it to their lips. They don't have to have spit going back and forth and in and out of their mouth throughout the entire game. They hit the button, electronic whistle will sound. So there's a lot of information in there, a lot to digest, like I said. And then also, just to end with this, and I'll open it up to some questions for you guys, is that we will be following our school return to school document also with all the health guidelines that we have to follow. This is extra that goes along with everything that has been presented to you so far this evening. So once again, this document would not come into effect until if and when PIAA and the government say we are moving forward with fall sports. As of now, that date is tentatively set for August 24th. August 24th will be the start of football heat acclimation. And it'll also be the start of all other sports for 3 weeks of practices. The football season, what it looks like as of now, has currently lost 2 games off of the schedule. So it goes from a 10-week schedule down to an 8-week schedule. September 11th is the start of fall sports games, if and when approved on August 24th. The only 2 sports that would start prior to September 11th would be golf and tennis. because they do not need as long as mandated required practice time by the PIAA before they can play games. There will be no concessions, no fans, no spectators. And as you saw on this guideline, if you went through it, all event staff personnel will have to be screened. Anybody that comes through the gates, the doors, onto the field will have to go through health screening and temperature check prior to being permitted in the field of play.
So I do want to note, which I think is really critical, because this was also a superintendent discussion, on August 10th, the PHAC Executive Committee met because the ADs talked about changing to a league schedule competition model. And what that means is they will not compete outside of this league. I don't know if Brad wants to talk a little bit about the difference between the current competition schedule and the impact of moving to a PHAC league schedule. It did go to the executive committee of PHAC. They have not rendered a decision, but it was a recommendation of our ADs. So do you want to talk a little bit to?
Sure. And what that looks like is basically the only schedule that would drastically change, and we would redo the entire schedule, would be football. Because football is so spread out all over the place. We already went from 10 games down to 8. If you take and make it a league schedule only, you might only end up with 4 games or 5 games. And football is not a sport where you can just call somebody up on the phone and say, hey, do you want to play next Friday? It's not that easy. It doesn't work that way. So if the PHAC League would vote to go to a league schedule only, the football schedule would be reworked and would be provided back to all of the school districts with a league and divisional schedule only for PHAC schools. We would not be traveling outside of the PHAC area in this specific league to play anybody. That also goes for all other sports. The difference being is that all other sports, we would not redo the schedules. They have more games, they're more spread out, there's more flexibility. For example, in soccer, we only play everybody in the division one time. You don't play them twice. So the games that you would lose that were outside of the district, there's going to be other teams that have lost games also where they're playing outside of the league. And there will be that flexibility to pick up a phone and pick up games that are crossover games within the PHAC League. It will not be as difficult. The other sport that I want to point out has a drastic change if and when we continue with fall sports is cross country. Cross country is a sport that has 5, 6, 7 schools potentially at any given Tuesday meet. Reason being for that is they have everybody, we run everybody in the league. So it's not divisional lineup, even though there are divisions, we still currently run everybody in the league. If and when fall sports do resume, cross country will be broken down to dual meets, which means us versus one other school. So it will not be Milton, Warrior Run, Lewisburg, Danville, and Shamokin all lining up at Milton, Faulkner Elementary to run. That's a lot of kids because you have junior high boys, junior high girls, varsity boys, varsity girls. It will be solely one school versus another school. The league assigner for cross country is currently in the process of redoing the schedule to make it a Tuesday, Saturday dual meet schedule, because normally in a regular year, your Saturdays are your big days for invitationals, where you travel to Bloomsburg University and run with 50 schools, or you go to Kutztown and run with 45 schools. Those invitationals have all been canceled mostly to this point already. So they would look to go to a Tuesday, Saturday dual meet schedule only to make cross country safer.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So we've been hearing all the dominoes falling with college sports, and there's discussion of postponing fall season sports to the spring when hopefully there will be a vaccine available and we won't have to worry about people dying. Is there any discussion of potentially postponing the season?
So that's a great question, and that has been a lot of questions and concerns and discussion about that, but nothing directly with the PIAA. to my knowledge. They have not come out and said that if we can't play in the fall, we will look to moving to the spring. That has not been a direct conversation with PIAA. It has been a big conversation with other ADs across the entire Commonwealth. There's been a lot of different scenarios talked about, a lot of different ideas flying around on if we can't play in the fall and we have to go through January, what does it look like and how do we make it happen? So there's a lot of different ideas out there, but nothing directly from PIAA on that specific question as of now.
Attorney Beard will weigh in on this, but you do have a letter from him in regards to what he knows is going on across the Commonwealth. To date, when he wrote this letter at that time, he had not heard of anyone canceling fall sports. However, he did recommend that we extend our current plan, waiting for the governor and PIAA to make a decision. Attorney Beard, if you want to weigh in on this.
Well, the letter sort of sums it up. I think Rod did an excellent job on that. Rod, if you don't mind, could I just get that summary? Because it's pretty helpful, like in a written format, but everything is being strung along. I think I wouldn't precipitously act on it. I think you need to take a wait and see approach and see what they're going to do. I mean, that's ultimately going to be the control. And it's no different than what you see with, college sports. I mean, difference between 17 and 18, 19-year-olds, there isn't any really big difference, but they're taking it one step at a time and making their decisions. And we just need to do the same for our kids here. And I think it would be premature to cut or eliminate it without letting the people that have the biggest stake in it, the governor, Department of Health, and PIAA, lend some insight into that.
Our students, athletes are still practicing in non-mandatory practices. We did not change that status based on moving to substantial. I know that our coaches are very serious about implementing our health and safety standards, so we did not stop practice.
I think I kind of stirred the bee's nest at the last meeting a little bit, but what really was my intention, that suddenly we were shutting down fall sports. I don't think anybody ever really said that. We were expressing concern. I still have concern, but I think the plan is solid, and as long as you're telling me, Mr. Harris, that the PHAC is looking to schedule more locally, we go with PIAA's recommendation in the state, and hopefully get the kids on the field and let them at least feel normal again a little bit. I still have concerns, but it's been covered in my eyes.
I agree, except the closing of the document, which says to be determined softball, cheer, and band.
Yes, so in the PIAA document, this one here that was sent to me, which is copied and right into the statement or the packet that you have in front of you, they did not cover junior high softball because they did not realize that our localized area plays junior high softball in the fall. Most schools, districts play junior high softball in the spring, so they did not realize that. And they were also going to give us verbiage on cheer and band also. So that is to be determined and to be coming.
I think that's a pressing issue considering those activities are also happening right now.
Yep.
Have the band or cheerleaders been given any type of guidelines?
So when the governor updated his statement on August 6th, he said that band and cheer are permitted to start and are permitted to continue doing what they've been doing. As a league, PHAC discussion with our athletic directors last week, we decided that if fall sports do happen, we will not be sending cheerleaders or band to away events. It'll only be band and cheer at home events only. They will not travel to away games.
Right, and I appreciate that concession, but as a district, have we given our band director and our cheerleading coach any guidelines as this document spells out for other activities?
Just to follow the current model that we have, which all sports are paused in right now. which is the one we approved on June 16th. That's what every sport is following right now.
Okay.
The band director included in giving the directors following on certain guidelines.
Got it. Thank you. I'm comfortable with this document, but I'd like to see it complete with those other activities in as soon as possible.
And as soon as I get any of that from the PIAA, I will definitely pass that along.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Snyder. We still have hesitation, we still have concern, but I don't see this board shutting sports down. I think we all agree sports are vital, extracurriculars are vital. I've gotten several emails this week, personal emails that attacked me for not understanding the importance of extracurriculars, despite the fact I spent 9 years in this district as a band director. So I think things need to move forward as well. So thanks for all the work in making this as manageable and complete as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic from anyone? Any questions?
Carl, does the board need to do a motion to move forward with the current plan, pending a decision by the governor and PIAA?
Did Rod's plan like come to like a sunset date yet?
Of a sunset date on what you presented the board with tonight? When it's done, because the other plan has a sunset date, that the
Yeah.
last date of your other plan was August.
Yeah, so the other plan was supposed to go to August 10th, which was the start of heat acclimatization for football. Since PIAA has postponed the season, we are supposed to follow our board-approved summer guidelines that we are currently following until further notice, which I hope that notice comes on August 21st, when PIAA reconvenes and meets again.
So what they're telling you is you don't have to vote on it, just continue? Is that what they're telling you?
So the reason I presented this plan tonight is that if and when PIAA and the state say sports are allowed to move forward, we would not have another board meeting before August 24th. And I would like to have this plan in place, which is all of the PIAA guidelines on what we're supposed to follow and how we're supposed to do things, ready to go if sports do start back up on August 24th, because our next board meeting would not be till later in September.
You mean what you just presented now? Correct?
Yes.
Well, then just say, make a motion to continue on and to approve what has been presented, subject to any final direction by the PIAA, Department of Health, or the governor's office. And if Rod wants to cut it off with the PIAA, that's fine. But once again, we have the governor and Department of Health meddling in the, the sports thing.
And Carl, I did send you that document, so you should have that now to look at. In the very beginning of the document, it does state that all executive orders by the president or the governor will be adhered to effective upon the release date, and all guidelines by the PIAA will be adhered to effective upon release date.
All right.
So that is our very first.
Yeah, then just approve the plan as presented tonight, as presented. That should work.
Dr. Weaver, would you like to?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the plan that was presented by Athletic Director, Mr. Rod Harris. And again, stressing that it's subject to PIAA, Governor, Department of Health, and that there will be future inclusion of language regarding cheer and band participation as well.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Are there questions from the folks?
Give me just one moment to.
Can I make a comment while you're looking at that? inclusion of the band activity in this document, I appreciate how we're including that. I don't see it's going to directly give guidance as far as how that student group conducts themselves or practices, or, like, I think this is more in their involvement in football or going to football games. Am I understanding that correctly? So I guess that's where I was. Where are we
Game
with?
day, more the actual extracurricular practice.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The district's health and safety plan covers items such as cleaning of instruments, practicing with social distancing. So there are components of the district approved plan that would apply.
Directly, okay.
Yes, and this is in addition to the district plan. This does not replace the district plan.
Thank you.
Clarification.
At this time, I don't have anything pertaining to what Rod presented.
Mr. Jones.
I project well. Nancy Bigger asks, can a motion be made to allow families to attend the outdoor fall sports where social distance can happen appropriately? Would passes be provided to a family of players so that they could attend for members of the household?
Mr. Harris.
Yeah, so at this time, Governor Wolf and the state have said no fans or spectators are allowed at any of the athletic events if athletic events do happen, and PIAA supports that mandate.
Any further?
A lot of conjecture online about football specifically, wondering how football players can tackle each other and stay 6 feet apart.
So the one thing that is addressed is that during the field of play and during play, that masks are not happening, and that 6 feet apart is acknowledged that cannot happen. However, all of the other guidelines that are put in place during the games and for all the extra players that are not in the field of play, the PIAA still feels that it is safe for our kids to return to all fall sports.
Is that everything, Mr. Jones?
Just about.
All right. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Ms. Kessler?
Yes.
Mr. Moser?
Yes.
Dr. Paloulis?
No.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rand?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, do we have any comments from visitors relating to any of the board agenda items beyond return to school and PIAA and sports?
I do have a couple comments that came in regarding the return to school that didn't quite make the deadline before. Would you like me to share those? I don't have anything in addition to them.
Sure.
Okay. So one comment states that there's a feeling that they don't know anything more than they did before the presentation based on the discussion tonight regarding the returning to school plan. And then there's another comment that these are our children. We need to keep them safe. And it doesn't sound like anyone knows what to do at this time. This is very concerning. Why don't we consider starting school a little later and see how the numbers work out? And that's all I have.
Dr. Keegan, would you like to clarify what we're doing?
Sure. School will open on August 20th, 2020, according to the board approved calendar. In addition to parents having choices, if parents chose for their student or child to attend in a traditional model, we now will extend a hybrid learning model or families that would like to have their children come to school face-to-face. The choice of hybrid learning would mean that the child would come to school on Monday and Tuesday as regular. Wednesday, they would learn at home virtually with their teacher, and Thursday and Friday, they would come to school face-to-face. All additional options remain: the Milton Cyber Academy, the Flexible Learning Academy.
Thank you for that clarification. I trust that answered that question for our community. All right, we'll move on to approval of minutes. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the minutes from the July 21st, 2020 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Under our district-wide reports, under executive report, unless there are any questions, I would like to make a block vote for items listed in 7. That's items listed through A through E.
I did have one question on item D. We actually have services located in the Wilkes-Barre area in Luzerne County. Do we have an out-of-district placement there that we're doing this, or?
Which item are you? I'm sorry.
The recommended approval for the Children's Service Center agreement. I'm not familiar with them working locally. They're a Luzerne County.
We currently do not have any placements there. Certainly, we look at agreements with various locations. The availability of mental health services, as you know, Dr. Weaver, at times are low. Additionally, I'm not sure exactly on this, but if there's an inpatient hospitalization that utilizes some educational services through there, they would charge us separately as well.
Quite honestly, that's what I was trying to figure out, how it was connected, because it's really too far to travel daily.
Right.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? We need a second, please.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Ms. Kessler?
Yes.
Mr. Moser?
Yes.
Dr. Palulis?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Finance Committee, Mr. Moser.
Yes, all we have this evening is I'd like to make a motion for a block vote for items 8A through 8B.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any questions? Could we have roll call vote, please?
Ms. Kessler?
Yes.
Mr. Moser?
Yes.
Dr. Palulis?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes. That everything this evening under finance. Facilities, Mr. Hosterman.
Nothing this evening other than to say I think our buildings and facilities will enjoy having students back in them.
I think you're right. Thank you. Excuse me, athletics and extracurricular, Dr. Weaver.
I'd like to make a motion for a block vote for items A, B, C, and D.
I have a question. Did we not just approve, or are we approving something different for D than what was already voted on?
That.
Yep, you're correct. So A, B, and C.
Good catch.
Under that motion, it does just list items A through C. Okay. With a motion
That was a motion.
and a second. Mr. Frederick. Okay, we have roll call, please.
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Dr. Palulis,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Ms. Kessler,
Yes?
Mrs. Rance.
Yes. Education and Technology, Dr. Palulis.
There's nothing on the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel Committee, Dr. Weaver.
I'd like to make a motion for a block vote on items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, skip J, and K.
Including K or
Are
skipping J?
you skipping K or
Yeah.
including K?
I'm including K, skipping J.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion and a second. Are there any questions? We have roll call, please.
Dr. Palulis,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Ms. Kessler,
Yes?
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Mrs. Rance.
Yes.
And I'd like to make a motion for the approval of item J.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? We have roll call, please.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Abstain?
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Ms. Kessler,
Yes?
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Dr. Palulis,
Yes.
Mrs. Rance.
Yes. Anything else, Dr. Weaver?
Nothing further this evening, thank you.
Legislative and Policy Committee, Mr. Fry.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for 13 and 13A open records report, please.
Second?
That is in the form of a motion.
Motion, and there's a second. Any questions? We have roll call, please.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Ms. Kessler,
Yes?
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Dr. Palulis,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Rance.
Yes.
Nothing additional, Mrs. Ryan.
Thank you. CSIU representation, Dr. Weaver.
You will have a report out from the next meeting, which will occur this month, in your next board packet. And things at the IU continue to move forward, and thankfully, they have the ability to offer support to a lot of local districts as we move through various types of distance education, data collection, and they're trying to apply their model the best they can to be a support to our local districts.
All right. Secretary's Correspondence, Mr. Fink.
This month, we have a number of donations and grants. Our music department received an anonymous donation of $20,000 to be used for student instruments.
Damn.
The elementary libraries received $200 from First Book, and the Milton Area School District received school memorabilia from the estate of Judith Campbell, class of 1955. We also received grants from the Central Susquehanna Community Foundation in the amount of $1,000 for the Panther Pantry. National Beef provided $12,000 to fund hotspot purchases for students doing remote learning. And through the CARES Act, we received $199,509 to the district. And that is, sorry, I almost forgot. Our Panther Pride Award winner for the month of August is Curtis Connard in the Information Technology Department. And I don't know if Mr. Gemberling would like to, do you want to share something regarding Curtis?
Okay. Curtis is a Milton graduate. He graduated in 2014. We used him as a summer helper for a couple of years, and we hired him on as a full-time person right after he graduated. He attended McCann while he was still working here. He's a hard worker for our department. He's our go-to person for anything with our website. He does a majority of the iPad repairs and does a phenomenal job doing troubleshooting and other various tasks for the tech department. It's an honor to see him get this award. That's all I have to say at this time.
Thank you. That is everything for me this month.
Is there a motion to accept the donations and grants?
So moved.
Dr. Weaver made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Frederick? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Please pass on congratulations to Curtis. Good to hear that. Thank you. Our superintendent's report, Dr. Keegan.
I'd first like to recognize Allison Wright. That was a surprise for us to receive her resignation. She's really a critical part of our fifth grade team, and she certainly will be missed. That is a very high-performing team at Bacher Elementary, and Allison will be very difficult to replace. So we were sorry to say goodbye to her, but we always wish people well as they start a new journey and they open a new door. I also want to thank some people tonight. Specifically, we have new union leadership. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Mrs. Kelly Browse is now our union president. And I'd like to thank the union for maintaining open lines of communication. I know some districts are struggling in labor relations. We're not. We're pretty fortunate. We have a really good relationship with our staff. They listen to us, we listen to them, and we try to work together. So I would really like to thank MAEA for all the support that they have shown the board of directors and the administrative team in the past, I don't know how many months I've lost time since March 13th. I also would like to thank the board for supporting our presentation again as we came back to you, not at all expecting, as Mr. Moser said, he entered the week thinking one thing, and that quickly got turned on its head with this new community transmission status. It seems like we're the trailblazers every time. I think we are the first district in the Susquehanna Valley region to have our board meeting tonight, so I'm sure that there are several superintendents listening to our board discussion and the decision of this board and what Milton is deciding to do. So I want to thank the board. I also want to thank this administrative team. We just keep playing catch. A new ball gets thrown at us and we gear up and we figure out what is best for kids and our families, and we bring it to the board. It's always with the purest intent and sincerity that we try to think about every stakeholder that's impacted by every new mandate or recommendation that we're receiving from the Department of Health, from the governor, and the Department of Education. They are working hard for everybody in this school district, and sometimes I don't stop often enough and say thank you to that team. So that is all I have for this evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll ask once again if there are any comments from visitors. Mr. Fink?
Yep, one moment. I'm just
Okay.
trying to catch up and see what we have. The question asking, oh, sorry, I believe we read that one already. Nothing pertaining to items on the agenda currently.
This opportunity is for
Just ready? Okay.
Yes.
So an additional question is, how will social distancing work on school buses? And that's one that I can take. As we laid out in our health and safety plan previously, and it is it will be and is still posted on the district site under our reopening page. It states that we will require masks to be worn on the bus at all times. We also sent out a survey to families to ask them if they would be providing transportation to their students. The feedback from that survey showed that a great number of families will be providing transportation to for their students, which lowers our ridership numbers. But on top of that, as was shared earlier, a great number of our students have chosen to do cyber academy, homeschooling, outside charters, as well as the flexible learning. All of these things has decreased our ridership. And I think that a goal of a lot of districts going into this was to look at, how can we possibly reduce the number of students on our buses by, let's say, 50%. If you look at the numbers, that's pretty much where we are. We had 60% of families electing traditional learning, which requires transportation, but of those families, we have a great number that are going to transport the students themselves. So while we can't maintain 6 feet on a bus, it just isn't practical, nor is it affordable. We would not be able to fund something where we're transporting, say 10 students on a bus to allow 6 feet. We're going to, through the use of masks and sanitation after every run, implement our best efforts to sanitize, and also we are going to ventilate every bus run to the maximum ability. So windows will be open as much as weather permits, depending on the time of year. But that is how we will work to mitigate the spread on the bus, even when social distancing to the full extent is not possible.
I would just like to add, we are having assigned seats.
Yes.
And every other seat on the bus will be vacant. And we are encouraging families to sit together. Additionally, every bus will have masks and hand sanitizer available on the bus.
I don't see any other additional questions that I have received.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Mr. Jones.
I have a general comment about a lot of the traffic that's come in this evening on the YouTube channel, and mentioning Dr. Keegan earlier about playing a game of catch while the administration really handles the curveballs. Many of the questions that I've seen on here could be answered by our families and community members heading to our website, which is miltonsd.org, where they'll find many different looks at flexible instruction, cyber academy, the very in-depth health and safety plan. And so a lot of the questions that we see come through community relations could easily be found on our website by taking a couple of minutes and going through there. So I would urge the community to take some time and really dig into that and spend some time with it, because the administrative team put a lot of countless hours into building it, as you saw during last month's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board comments this evening?
I'd like to comment, please. After receiving many correspondence with community members this week, I just would like to implore our community members, our stakeholders, to realize the situation that we're in, to realize the incredibly difficult decisions that we're being asked to make. We are all in this together. Board members, administrators, parents, and students. We're all here for the best interest of kids, their education, and their well-being, and that includes mental health. So I appreciate the administration's emphasis on mental health with our students and how we're going to assist our students coming out of this terrible time. And I can't say enough good things about our team and this school district. I have relatives who serve in other districts, and I've listened to other districts, and I'm very proud of Milton. I think you all should be commended. So I would just ask our community to take a step back and not spread hate, even though you may not agree, but accept the fact that we are dealing with things we've never dealt with, and no one has the answers. That's all. Thank you for your understanding, and let's all be proud to be a Black Panther.
Just echoing that, what we've really experienced here tonight was coming together as a group and really wrestling with our own opinions, our own stance, and incorporating that, putting some of it aside, but coming together as a group of 9 and moving forward for the best interests of our kiddos. And along with that, as I said previously, I've had the opportunity to review at least 6 different health and safety plans throughout the area for different institutions, agencies. I'm proud to say that this is one of the best. In my opinion, it's the best. You're not going to find plans that are that comprehensive other places. When you look at even the tools selected by this admin team, and I'm familiar with the ACE study. There's a significant study with that survey. The best you can do. So I'm really proud of all of us. We've disagreed, we've agreed, but in the end, we've worked together for what's best for everyone. And really appreciate all of you for that.
I think there's enough thank yous. I'd like to add mine as well. I do see the daily work, the daily struggle to make good decisions. And I think you put your best foot forward. I appreciate all the community members that joined us this evening to hear firsthand our discussion. And do hope that they're satisfied with decisions, and knowing that we did make it in the best interest of their children. And we'll continue to do that. In fact, that's why we're here. So thank you all. If there's no one else, I need a motion to go into an executive session. We saved this till the end of the meeting to save you all from not having to wait with us. So if we could have a motion to go into executive for personnel reasons, I'd appreciate that. And there will be no further business when we return, so you'll return back to your normal lives.
So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. See you next month.
Do you want to stay?